Hi, I'm Paul from West Country Wanderings. Join me here today in Brixham. I'm actually at a location of Brixham called Churston, and I've actually just been filming further down in the town centre to show you bits of the old paintworks. I do a voiceover on that. It was very difficult and noisy to do pieces to camera down there. And the reason I've brought you to this location is to take you to the Grove, and this continues the story of Brixham paintworks and how it originated and why. And what we're coming to look at are the lime kilns in the Grove Valley, and then we're going to go have a walk further on down and explore the sea at Churston Cove. So come on, join me and have a wander through this lovely part of Brixham. Now I'm just going to pan the camera around, because beyond that farmhouse there and the rails for the horses is Churston Church. Churston lies about 3/4 of a mile outside of Brixham town centre, and we'll be going down to look at the sea part of Brixham in a minute, but we're actually heading this way. This is the lovely church at Churston. This isn't actually the old railway track, although it runs parallel to it. The Brixham line came off the line from Paignton to Kingswear at Churston. Churston station is still existing, but it's now part of the preserved line from Paignton to Kingswear / Dartmouth. Yeah, there was a branch line, much missed actually. I think it closed in 1962, and the station was high above the town of Brixham, but I don't think there are any remains of the station there now that's worth exploring. Yeah, so this footpath will take us down to a place called the Grove, which is a beautiful wooded valley. Unfortunately, it has had a bit of trouble with ash dieback disease, and I think 2 or 3 years ago a number of ash trees were felled to protect the spread of it. They have started some replanting, but it's still an interesting place to visit, as you will see further on. Just show this view over the hedge here. The reason for that is just to highlight the colour of the soil here. Where I live, about 2 miles outside of Dartmouth, there is a mixture of reddish soils and blackish soils, but in this part of Brixham you notice that, particularly this field here and the next ones around it, that the soil is actually a very, very vivid, almost like a blood red colour. And then that is quite significant to the story we're about to uncover, to do with paint in Brixham, because the soil, or the ochre in the soil, which obviously comes from the Devon red sandstone, that was used as a pigmentation in the dye. In actual fact, it was then used to dye the sails red, and they mixed that with the other byproducts which we're about to see. A very pleasing landscape on this side here. It's small copse dipping down into a little dell down the bottom there. Not sure if there's any earthworks in this area, because it does like kind of looks bumpy in places, so I don't know if there's any kind of Iron Age forts or anything like that in this part of Brixham. But I'll have a look and see what we can come up with. Yeah, we're still currently in lockdown, so I'm on my lockdown exercise walk at the moment, and the reason I'm allowed a little bit further away is because I work in Brixham, so I've literally just popped out of work and done some filming. I'll just show you this finger signpost here. We're going to head down to the left through Woodlands Walks and the Grove, and that'll take us to Churston Cove, 3/4 of a mile away. As you can see, Greenway, which we've already seen at a distance when we were doing the Ditson one, that's 3 3/4 miles away, and Churston Ferrers, that's where we've just come from. You've also got the Grove to the left, and that takes you down to another cove in Brixham called Churston Cove. So we're now actually in the Grove itself. So it's quite a steep valley here, just to show you down there. And unfortunately this is one of the areas here where a lot of the trees have been felled, although as you can see over on the opposite bank there, they have planted some new ones. I was speaking to one of my colleagues who lives in Brixham, and they said that in the autumn this was a spectacular spot for autumnal coloured foliage, but unfortunately because of the removal it's not quite as colourful as it once was. Now when I caught the ferry over to Brixham this morning, first ferry of the day, there was actually a considerable frost on my car when I left home. It was actually down to 1 degree, but it's actually just checked in the car now because I parked up at Churston Cove. It's about 15 degrees here this afternoon. It's about 3:30, coming up to 4 o'clock, and it's a very, very pleasant afternoon to be out and about. Very, very, very mild, and it's a lovely early spring day. And so this is the grove itself, in the valley floor now as it was. As you can see, particularly on the right hand side, the extent of the ash trees that unfortunately had to be felled due to ash dieback disease. I can't remember the Latin name for it, but I believe it was spreading from region to region across the whole United Kingdom. The spores of the fungus which attacks the bark could be carried on the soles of people's shoes as easily. If going from one place to another, those fungal spores would remain, and they would be carried from an infected area to another infected area. And unfortunately, the only other way to prevent it spreading to the rest is to actually fell the trees. It's such a shame, really. But as you can see, they have replanted quite a considerable number of trees. It actually looks very similar to where the other day at Cornwall where they've done the new wood there called bow wood, and obviously you've got the established trees which are still extant behind, but still a very, very pleasant place to come. It's very quiet down here, lots of bird song, and this footpath actually takes us all the way down to the sea, to Churston Cove, which is a delightful spot, as you'll shortly see. I'm going to insert some footage from what I took earlier on before I started filming down here at the Grove. It's actually quite close to where I work in Brixham. As I was doing some investigation work into the Torbay Paint Company, which it was a huge factory here in Brixham and employed, well, I can't get an exact figure, but it seems to be between 500 and 1,000 people. It closed in the mid-1960s. There is a cottage right next to the factory, and a certain famous author lived there. So yeah, there was you have this cottage right next to the paint factory, in the pretty much in the centre of the town. Very delightful cottage. I believe it's called Lawrenceston. It's a slate-hung, traditional Devon slate-hung property, and for many years of her life, a author called Flora Thompson lived there. You may be familiar with the TV adaptation of Lark Rise to Candleford, which starred a number of prestigious actors. I think it was filmed around what's the place called? Laycock in Wiltshire, where they've done the Harry Potter films. I think that's where it wasn't filmed in this part of the world. But as I say, the author who wrote the book, she actually wrote the book in that cottage here in Brixham. She actually wrote 4 of the novels there, and she sadly passed away in that cottage. I believe she's buried actually, though, in Dartmouth. I think it might be at the Townstall Church at the top of the town. Perhaps that's something I can investigate and explore and see if we can get that. But yeah, I was quite surprised, and as you'll see on the shot, it's quite difficult to get access from the road, but hopefully I've managed just to capture. You can see the blue plaque. I'll see if I can get a screen grab from the web to insert as well. The Torbay Civic Society placed that on the building just a couple of years ago. So I don't think it's that well known that Flora Thompson actually lived here in Brixham, but just another little aspect. So it's not all about Agatha Christie. Now currently standing on top of one of the lime kilns. In actual fact, you probably hear my voice getting a bit more echoey as we go through. There's the goes all the way down there, down to the bottom. And as we saw at Tucking Hay, this is where the limestone, which was quarried hereabouts. So there are some quarries in Churston, and the limestone would have then been heated to get slaked lime. They would have fed coke to have heated it, and the slaked lime would have been retracted, and that was used in the paint production process, as well as being a fertiliser for the fields. And we have another lime kiln just on the opposite side of the valley here. This is the front of the one I've just been standing on. We'll have a look inside. So this is very, very similar in size and shape to the one that's above the garage forecourt that we saw in Brixham earlier. And it's like a bowl shape at the front, as we saw at Tucking Hay, with the slot for the flue at the back for the name of the fumes to gun. And as we said, those fumes could be quite hazardous for the workmen if they were breathing it in, day out. Now up ahead it looks like we've got a state boundary post or gate marker just coming up here. And in the far distance you can actually see the cliffs which tower above the sea at this point. So we'll come on and have a look. And just about 30 seconds time you should actually be able to see Churston Cove open out before us. Sea should be nice colours today because it's very, very clear blue sky. There we have it. We've got people fishing on the opposite bank there, and the little lighthouse you can see there is at the end of Brixham Breakwater. Now it's quite clear that on this side of the cliffs here there's clear evidence of quarrying, which had been used again for the limestone kilns that we saw. And Churston Cove is just in there on the right between the headland that's facing us. As I say, this beach here is Churston Cove. Just climbing up the side of the cliff now, and now Churston Cove is coming into view. I've just got a fishing trawler coming back into Brixham Harbour now. And as I said previously, Brixham is the biggest fishing port on the south coast. The headland on the right, distant headland, is Berry Head. We're now climbing up pretty high, just getting glimpses of Tor Bay through the other side. Hopefully we'll see that a lot more clearly in a moment. I'm afraid the view is still a bit obscured, but probably be able to make out a couple of cruise ships. That's actually Torquay on the opposite side of the bay there, and Paynton is around over here. So yeah, if you're not familiar with Tor Bay, there's three towns that make up Tor Bay. We have Torquay, which is seen as on the opposite side. We have Paynton and Brixham. Brixham's actually the smallest of the three towns. I think the population is something like 11,000. I think in total, off the top of my head, I think the total population of all three towns is something like 170, 180,000, somewhere around that sort of figure. So if you add the three up together in the conurbations and the outlying areas, it's actually would make a substantial city on its own. So it is quite one of the three biggest urban areas in Devon, the other two being Exeter, and Exeter being the county city, or the capital city if you like, of Devon and Plymouth. I think the population of Exeter is somewhere around 100,000, and I think the population of Plymouth is around about 260 or 265,000. The next nearest biggest conurbation in Devon would be Barnstaple in North Devon. I think its population is about 70,000. Have quite substantial cliffs down this side here. It's still very difficult to get an unobtrusive shot across the bay from here because there's woods all around here. Not that I'm knocking the trees because they're fantastic. We're looking towards centre of Paignton at the moment, and as I say, Torquay's over there. There's a couple of cruise ships there, and there's Thatcher's Rock over there and another cruise ship out on the right. Now, we're not actually finished with the coves yet because we have a third cove for you today. So we've had Fishcombe. Churston was the main one we were above, but there is a third one, and that's called Elbury Cove. And we're actually on the edge of Churston golf course here, but Elbury Cove we can just see before we take the footpath back to where I'm parked. And I'll finish this vlog. A couple of things I'll add on to it. I'm going to do the Churston station, look at that on the way back home, and then probably in the next couple of days I'll do some filming around Brixham, so hopefully that'll be on this vlog for you to have a look at too. Certainly evidence of quarrying taking place here. You can actually make out some exposed rock in the base of the I don't know what you call it, a quarrying dip. Not sure what the technical term is for a quarried out area, but certainly that limestone would have been excavated. In actual fact, you can see some exposed limestone here on the actually this forms part of the southwest coast path, because we've come back on the top way. Rather than retracing our steps back through the grove, we've come around to do a full circle around the edge of the Churston golf course, and as I say, this is part of the southwest coast path, which I'm sure we'll be meeting up with quite fairly frequently on West Country Wanderings. As I say, I don't think I've got the energy to do all of it, but if you're not familiar with the southwest coast path, it goes from Minehead in Somerset all the way round via Land's End to finish at the town of Poole in Dorset. Now, I think if I'd come along this path probably a week or two ago, I think I would have found it would have been very, very muddy. It is still muddy in the centre section of it, but on the right and left hand lane, the walkers, and it's a very well frequented path, as you can imagine, to do a circuit around here for the local residents, and obviously as we go into the summer season, the tourists as well. Because it's clay, Devon clay, it has become quite hard impacted down, so and it has started to dry on the side, but it is still quite muddy, as you can see in the centre of the trail. Now, I hope you're all keeping well. I haven't heard any more news about the job that I've applied for in Cornwall, so obviously I'm still here in Devon for the time being. But whichever point I do move, obviously I'll be continuing with West Country Wanderings, but be able to film in different locations in Cornwall. However, I intend to do that during when I have got time away from work, to go into Cornwall on trips when we're allowed to travel again, which will probably be, I would imagine, around May time. But all being well, but obviously we need to keep a track on how things are going with COVID-19. So I hope you're all keeping well. As I say, I had my vaccination, I think it was about 2-3 weeks ago now. The first few days after I was, did make me feel a bit low. I think it might be to do with the fact that I'd previously had glandular fever about 5 years ago, and I think it reignited the Epstein-Barr virus. So please don't be put off by the side effects, because the side effects you get with the vaccine are certainly a lot less than what you would get if you actually had COVID-19. So if you do get the opportunity to have the vaccine, I would encourage you to take it up on that, and that's the best way we have, the best thing we have in our armoury to come out of this pandemic. And this is Elbury Cove. I seem to remember that there is a derelict bathing house on the beach down here. Now overlooking the Broadsands area of Paignton. Now, Broadsands has its own beach, and it's also famous for another reason. Isambard Kingdom Brunel built viaduct, that's the line from Paignton to Kingswear, Dartmouth, that went from over the valley that goes down towards Broadsands Beach. There's a very substantial viaduct over there, with an impressive piece of civil engineering. Wonderful moss on this tree here, absolutely fabulous, all the way around. This is the point in the walk where the footpath, not the southwest footpath, because we're heading back in towards the centre of Churston now, it actually crosses over the Churston golf course. So you need to be looking out for golf balls, but not today because we're still in lockdown. No one's actually playing golf, so there's no danger of being hit by a flying golf ball. So at least I hope not, anyway. Yes, it looks like that the grounds people here have taken the opportunity to reseed some of the golf course here at the moment. See some of those patches there where the grass would normally be, so it's been reseeded, so while the golf course isn't being used here throughout lockdown. Now, just stopped off here at Churston Station. Obviously it's closed at the moment due to the lockdown, and I know when they had the reopening last year, they were running through trains from Paignton to Kingsway. They weren't stopping at Churston, so I'm not quite sure why, but just have a look. Obviously we can't go on the platforms, we can have a look at the platform on the other side from this side here. I said on the previous video that this line, sorry about the noisy traffic, I'm on the main Brixham, Dartmouth and Paignton Road at the moment. This site, the trains continued here for British Rail until 1972, and it was at this location that the line veered off towards Brixham. I'll see if I can find an old photograph I can put in a Wikimedia Commons, but this was the junction of the old line towards Brixham, and as I said, when that closed in the 60s, the line continued through to down to Kingsway, where obviously you can get the ferry across towards Dartmouth. The building on the right hand side is the repair engineering shop, and the building on the left hand side is used as a paint spraying workshop for the locomotives. When they took over the line in the 70s, it was only one way through here, one track, and they reinstated that, the second line you can see there on the right hand platform, in the 1980s, and then reopened the engineering workshops on the right hand platform. You can just see through the window of the paint shop as one of the coaches is actually having a respray in the classic GWR chocolate and cream colours. What is interesting here is that they have a turntable on the right hand. The main running line is on the left of the frame here. That takes you back towards Paignton direction from here, and obviously you've got a line spurring off from that on the right hand side, one obviously leading on to the turntable, and there's also a couple of sidings there where they stable goods trains, which they use. It's not actually for carrying goods as such, but they're used for demonstration trains. I think the line here has actually been relaid. It's certainly got new ballast and rails on it, so they've obviously been working on that throughout lockdown. And also this here is a new road bridge. I'm not sure when it was put in. It looks like it would have been late 70s, early 80s, certainly long after the original Brixham line had closed. Well, here I am on Brixham Breakwater. It's exactly half a mile long, so a mile there and back, and it overlooks Brixham Harbour. And behind me is Brixham Cove and Churston Cove, where we were earlier. Just panning around to give you an impression of where we are. That building there is Plymouth University. It's the Marine Studies Laboratory. And most of the rest of the buildings, obviously you've got housing up top, different brightly coloured properties there, is to do with the large fishing industry. So they have the crab centre there, and then you have the main fish market. You can see the brightly coloured boxes underneath, and there is a restaurant on top of that. Just a moment here, we have two fishing trawlers making their way around the breakwater here in Brixham, and they will then make their way down to here. That's Torquay over there. There's cruise ships which we've seen when we were over at Brixham, and that's the end of the breakwater, so they'll make their way round there, and then they'll head over, right over here, to where they berth back over at the fish market. Now, up until a couple of years ago, every year there was a Brixham trawler race. I'm not sure, I don't think Plymouth had a trawler race, although it has got a large fishing port there as well. Something we'll maybe look at in the future from the Barbican. They used to hold races with the trawlers, but I think a couple of years ago they ran into trouble with the insurance being too expensive to cover it, so sadly those races are no more. Now, both of the trawlers have rounded the breakwater and making their way back in. Obviously it's a very dangerous occupation, fishing, and we'll see a memorial to, sadly, two fishermen who passed away last year.
And people would be diving in.
No, it's just, if it was, you know,
At least 3 steps,
if it was a warm country, this would all be lit up.
We're now looking directly towards Churston Cove, where we were earlier, and I walked up the cliffs to the right of the cove there, up through the woods and back towards Churston. Now, as two trawlers heading in, another trawler is heading out, just to give you an impression of how busy fishing industry still is here in Brixham. Back along the breakwater towards the town centre here in Brixham. completes our tour around Churston and Brixham. Hope you enjoyed it. As usual, if you did, please consider giving it a like, a thumbs up, a share, comment or subscribe to West Country Wanderings channel. So I'm Paul, I'll be back here again soon with another explore around this fascinating corner of the United Kingdom. Till then, see you all soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye.